steam in my kitchen doesn't smell like garlic or ginger tonight. It smells like copper and burned ozone. I don't look up from the Wagyu ribeye on my cutting board. I don't need to. I can feel the man behind me, the way you feel a storm through a wall. In the pressure, in the air going thin. He's leaning against the industrial prep table. His breathing comes heavy, measured. His blood hits the linoleum with the sound of a clock. Drop, drop, drop. Each one is a cent he owes me for the floor wax. Don't move, I say. My voice is flat, clean, like the blade of my santoku. I reach behind the spice rack and pull out the fishing line and the curved needle. I don't touch him to comfort him. I touch him to close the account. He doesn't flinch when I pierce the skin of his shoulder. He's used to pain. This is a man who once sat on the obsidian throne of the South District. A man whose family crest could shut down entire streets just by being seen. Merchants used to bow when he walked past their stalls. Now he washes my sauté pans. Now he believes love is a sanctuary. He's wrong. In this city, love isn't a sanctuary. It's a liability. Outside the reinforced steel shutters, the district of ash is screaming. Tires shriek. Drones thump the air in slow hunting patterns. The logistics union isn't looking for a gang leader tonight. They're looking for a deficit. In our world, blood is noise. The ledger is law. I pull the line tight. The tear in his back closes like a mouth learning how to keep a secret. My hands don't shake, even when a shadow crosses the frosted glass of the front door. The shadow is holding a tablet, a digital ledger. Red scanner light bleeds through the cracks in the frame, crawling across the floor like something alive. You should have stayed a king, I murmur as I tie off the knot. At least then, you had a price. He turns to me. His eyes are still looking for the girl he thinks he saved. He reaches up. His fingers are stained with his own high-born blood. They almost touch my cheek. The front door chime cuts through the moment. Clack. It sounds like a funeral bell. The health inspector hasn't come for the meat. He's come for the man. My eyes flick to the host stand, to the heavy red mechanical stamp waiting there. If I press it, his life ends on paper. If I don't, mine ends in the street. So tell me, what would you trade to become invisible in a city that counts every breath? Welcome to the district of Ash. You've heard this story before. The prince who walks away from the crown. The woman who becomes his hiding place. You think this is a romance? You think this little restaurant is where the world loses track of them? You're wrong. In this city, nothing is ever hidden. There is only unpaid. The steam in your noodles, the warmth in your radiator, the air in your lungs. Every one of them is a line item in a contract managed by the logistics union. We don't trade in money here. We trade in time. We trade in identity. We trade in favor. Tonight, I'm taking you inside a place we call neutral ground. A back alley restaurant that serves the best braised short ribs in the underground. But don't look at the menu. Look at the dishwasher with the posture of a king who forgot how to kneel. Look at the girl behind the counter who doesn't smile anymore, not because she's tired, but because she's counting. This isn't a story about redemption. It's a story about substitution. It's about how I learned that the man I loved wasn't my shelter. He was my currency. You're going to watch a king become a serial number. You're going to watch a girl become a queen by spending the only thing she ever swore she wouldn't. Listen closely for the sound of the stamp, clack thud. In our world, that sound means someone just lost their future. Don't get attached to the names. By the time this ends, names won't exist. The ledger is open. The debt is due. Let's begin. The district of Ash doesn't have a sun. It has the glow, the orange radiance of 1,000 industrial heaters and neon signs reflecting off the smog. Inside my restaurant, the copper kettle, the glow is filtered through thick, bulletproof glass. My father used to say that a restaurant is the only place a killer can feel like a customer. That's the lie we sell. We call it neutral ground. Here, Syndicate hitmen sit 3 feet away from union bureaucrats. They leave their guns in the lockers at the door. They eat my spicy pork bone soup, they sweat, and for 45 minutes they pretend they aren't part of the machine. June, that was his name then, was leaning over the 3-compartment sink. Even in a stained grey apron, he looked like he belonged on a marble balcony. He was the heir to the Obsidian Syndicate, the man who was supposed to inherit the entire South District. 6 months ago, he'd walked into my kitchen, bleeding from a coup attempt, and asked for a job. Not protection, a job. He thought that by washing dishes, he was washing away his past. "Table 4 needs more tea," I said, sliding a tray toward him. He nodded, silent. He hadn't spoken a word since he'd signed the first silence contract. That was the entry fee for the neutral ground. To stay here, you have to surrender your voice. It's a street economy rule. A silent mouth creates no debt. I watched him move through the dining room. He moved with a grace that made the men in cheap suits look like cattle. I saw the way a syndicate captain at table 2 stiffened, his hand twitching toward a phantom holster. They knew who he was. But they couldn't touch him. Not here. At the end of the night, when the last bowl was stacked, I pulled out the ledger. It's a heavy leather-bound book with brass edges. Every employee, every regular, every guest has a page. "June," I said. He looked up. I pointed to the line at the bottom of his page. The syndicate was here tonight. They didn't move, but they watched. Their silence cost me 3 tables of turnover. People were too scared to linger. He reached for a pen. He wrote, "What is the cost?" 10 years, I said. I need 10 years of silence guaranteed. If you speak, if you leave, if you reclaim your throne, the debt of their presence falls on me. I'll lose the restaurant. He didn't hesitate. He signed. I took the red mechanical stamp from the drawer. The sound echoed in the empty kitchen. I looked at the signature. It was the last time I'd ever see that name in ink. New debt created. 3,650 days of existence. In the district of Ash, gossip is like fresh fish. If you don't sell it by morning, it stinks and loses its value. June, no, I had to stop thinking of him as June, was fast. He was efficient. He turned the dish pit into a tactical operation. But he was also a magnet. People didn't just come to eat. They came to see the fallen prince. Table 4 was our most expensive seat. It was tucked into a corner, shielded by a steam vent that made audio bugs useless. But it didn't shield against me. I had a directional mic hidden in the industrial hood over the stove. "The union is moving on the grain silos," a man whispered. I recognized him, a mid-level spy for the grain cartels. If the silos fall, the price of flour triples by Friday. I adjusted the flame on my burner. My heart hammered. If flour tripled, my margins vanished. I'd be in debt to the union within a month. I looked at the sink. The ex-heir was scrubbing a pot, his back turned. He knew what I was doing. He knew that neutral ground was just a fancy word for an information exchange. The spy finished his meal and walked to the counter. He didn't have credits, he had a secret. "I have something for you," he whispered, leaning in. "Something about the man in your kitchen." "I don't care about his past," I said, though my skin pricked. "This is about his future. The Union is looking for a reason to break your neutrality. They think you're hoarding an unregistered asset. An asset, not a person, a thing." The spy leaned closer. "I can tell you which inspector is coming. I can tell you what he's looking for. But you owe me, Hannah. When the grain silos fall, I'll need a place to stay. For free. For as long as it takes." I looked at the ledger. I looked at the boy at the sink. If I took the deal, I was betting on a war. If I didn't, the Union would crush us tomorrow. "Done," I said. I took the spy's name. I recorded the favor. Power shift. I now have the intel, but the spy owns a room in my house. That night, as the ex-heir walked past the window to the alley to throw out the trash, I noticed something. A small red laser dot danced across his shoulder, right where I'd stitched him. He didn't see it, but I did. The world was already pricing him out. The health inspector didn't wear a white coat. He wore a charcoal suit with the logistics union pin on the lapel. A stylized golden scale weighing a loaf of bread. He didn't look at the kitchen. He didn't look at the fridge. He walked straight to the dishwasher. "Unit 742, the inspector said. June didn't move. He kept scrubbing. "I'm speaking to you," the inspector said, his voice like dry parchment. I stepped between them, a damp rag in my hand. "He's under a silence contract. He can't answer you, and his name isn't a number." The inspector smiled. It was a cold, technical expression. In the eyes of the Union, every citizen is a unit of consumption and production. This man has ceased production for the Syndicate. He has no registered income. Therefore, he is an unregistered consumer, a parasite on the city's caloric flow. He tapped his tablet. "By sheltering him, you are participating in caloric theft. Unless," he paused, looking at the ex-heir's royal profile, "unless he is registered as a specialized asset, a tool of the trade." "He's a dishwasher," I said. "He's a king," the inspector countered. "His biological signature is tied to the obsidian vaults. The Union needs those vaults open to stabilize the district's economy. Give us his signature, and your restaurant gets preferred vendor status. Unlimited flour, unlimited salt." I looked at the ex-heir. If he signed, he wasn't just a man in hiding. He was a key, a piece of hardware. "He won't do it," I said. The inspector leaned in. "Then your flour shipment is cancelled. Your water is being throttled to 10% starting at midnight. How long can you stay neutral when your customers are thirsty, Hannah?" June stepped forward. He reached out and took the stylus from the inspector's hand. He looked at me, his eyes pleading for me to say no. But he saw the ledger in my hand. He saw the debts I was already carrying. He signed the tablet. Clack thud. The tablet chirped. "Identity liquidation complete." The inspector nodded. "Thank you, Unit 742. You are now legally a piece of kitchen equipment." The ex-heir looked at his hands. He didn't look like a king anymore. He looked like a ghost. The Union kept their word. The flour arrived, the water flowed. But something had changed in the air of the district of Ash. The restaurant was always full now. But people weren't coming to eat. They were coming to watch the asset work. I noticed a strange phenomenon. The digital price boards in the street, the ones that tracked the cost of meat and grain in real time, would dip whenever Unit 742 walked past the window. His mere presence was a market force. He was a magnet for stability. Why are the prices dropping? I asked a union courier at the bar. The market knows he's under our control now, the courier said, mouth full of noodles. As long as the union has the obsidian air, the syndicate won't riot. Peace is cheap, war is expensive. I looked at the kitchen door. I'd installed a heavy steel bar on it. Not to keep people out, to keep him in. The union had tagged the door. Asset cannot exit. I felt a twinge of something. Guilt. No. Fear. I was no longer a business owner. I was a jailer. One night I found him staring at a piece of beef on the prep table. He had a knife in his hand, but he wasn't cutting. He was just staring. What is it? I asked. He pointed to the meat, then to himself. He didn't have to say it. To the city there was no difference. They were both commodities. I reached out to touch his arm, but I stopped. If I showed him affection, the union would see it as system friction. They'd increase the maintenance tax on my ledger. Every hug would cost me a month's rent. Back to work, 742, I said. My voice cracked, but the ledger was watching. He went back to the sink. Microcliff. The more I treat him like a person, the more the city destroys me. The only way to save him is to stop loving him. The war didn't start with bombs. It started with a salt shortage. In the district of Ash, salt is the only thing that keeps the meat from rotting in the heat of the industrial vents. When the Syndicate hijacked the Union's brine trucks, the city began to starve. A group of Syndicate captains walked into my restaurant. They didn't leave their guns in the lockers. They marched straight to the kitchen door. "Give us the prince," the leader growled. "We need him to rally the troops. The Union is choking us out." I stood in front of the door. He's an asset of the Union now. You touch him, you're at war with the logistics board. "We're already at war," the man screamed. Suddenly, the kitchen door swung open. Unit 742 stepped out. He wasn't wearing his apron. He had found his old signet ring, the one I'd hidden in the floorboards. He'd put it on. The transformation was instant. The captains, men who had killed dozens, instinctively bowed their heads. The air in the room grew heavy. This was the borrowed kingship. He didn't speak. He just looked at them. His silence wasn't the silence of a dishwasher anymore. It was the silence of a commander. "Prince," the leader whispered. "Lead us. Tell us what to do." June looked at me. He was waiting for my permission. He was offering me his past to solve my present problem. "Go," I whispered. "End the salt blockade." He walked out of the restaurant with them. For the first time in months, he was free. But as the door closed, I looked at the ledger. A new line had appeared, written in a hand I didn't recognize. Debt. 1 king soul. Interest. Total substitution. I realized then that by letting him go, I hadn't freed him. I had just used him as a weapon. I was no longer the girl who saved him. I was the general who deployed him. The salt blockade ended within 6 hours. No blood was shed. June, I still thought of him that way in the dark, simply stood on top of a brine truck and looked at the guards. They laid down their arms. He came back to the restaurant that night, the signet ring glowing red under the neon. "You did it," I said, reaching for the ring. I wanted to take it off him. I wanted to put him back in the dish pit where it was safe. "He did well, didn't he?" A voice came from the back booth. A man sat there, shrouded in steam. The Union leader. My father. I froze. I hadn't seen him in 10 years. Not since he died in the Great Famine. "Father?" He stepped into the light. He looked exactly the same, but his eyes were like cold glass. He held a childhood photo of me. a little girl holding a wooden spoon. "You always had a talent for management, Hannah," he said. "Most people would have sold a prince for a quick payout. But you turned him into a recurring revenue stream. You leveraged his identity to stabilize the market. I'm impressed." "I wasn't leveraging him," I snapped. "I was protecting him." "Protection is just another word for asset security," my father said. "Why do you think the Syndicate found him so easily? Why do you think the salt trucks were hijacked? It was a test, a lesson in resource management." He pushed a contract across the table. "The union needs a new district director, someone who knows how to keep the peace through debt, not blood. Sign this, and the restaurant becomes the center of the city's economy. You'll have all the grain, salt, and power you ever wanted." "And what happens to him?" I pointed to the ex-heir. "He stays," my father said. "A king in a dish pit is the perfect symbol of our power. He is the reminder that no one, not even a god, is above the ledger." I looked at June. He was staring at me, his eyes wide. He realized it then. The war wasn't between him and his family. It was between me and mine. And he was just the prize. I picked up the pen. Clack thud. I signed for the grain. I signed away my autonomy. The Syndicate didn't take the test well. When they realized that they had been manipulated by the Union, and by me, they returned for their prince. They didn't come with guns this time. They came with lawyers and scanners. "We're reclaiming our property," the Syndicate lawyer said, pointing a barcode scanner at June's neck. Beep. The screen flashed. "Owner, logistics, union/custodian, Hannah." "The Obsidian Syndicate has a prior claim," the lawyer argued. "He belongs to the bloodline." I stepped forward. I didn't feel like a girl anymore. I felt like a machine. "His bloodline was liquidated in the coup," I said, my voice echoing in the cold kitchen. "He surrendered his name. He surrendered his identity. He is a legally registered asset of this establishment. You want him? Buy out the debt." I showed them the ledger. The number was astronomical. The cost of every meal he'd eaten, every stitch I'd sewn, every breath he'd taken under my roof, compounded with union interest. "We can't pay this," the lawyer stammered. "Then he stays," I said. June looked at me. There was a moment, just one, where he reached out and grabbed my hand. His skin was hot. He was pleading. "Don't do this," his eyes said. "Don't turn me into a number." But if I let him go, the Syndicate would kill him in a week. If I kept him, he was a slave. "I'm keeping him," I told the Syndicate. "Not because he's your prince, but because he's my best worker." The continuous forfeiture clause activated. The light in the kitchen turned a harsh, clinical white. Permanent loss. The man I loved just became a line item on a balance sheet. Weeks passed. The restaurant became a fortress. We were the most successful business in the district of Ash. We had the best food, the best security, and the most famous asset in the city. But June was disappearing. Not physically. He was still there, scrubbing the pots. But when he walked past the security cameras, they didn't record a face. They recorded a blank space with a serial number floating over it. No record found. He had lost enough identity that the world's sensors couldn't even see him as human anymore. One night, he tried to leave. He walked to the front door and pushed. The alarm didn't go off. Instead, the building's power simply shut down. The air scrubbers stopped. The lights died. The city's supply chain logic wouldn't allow the asset to move. He slumped against the door, defeated. I walked over to him in the dark. I wanted to tell him I was sorry. I wanted to tell him that I'd find a way to fix this. But as I opened my mouth, I felt a sharp pain in my chest. A system friction alert popped up on my watch. My own heart rate was being taxed. Loving him was literally killing my credits. "Go back to the kitchen, 742, I whispered. I didn't use his name. I couldn't. The word felt like lead in my mouth. I went to my host stand and called the Syndicate. I offered them a deal. I will give them 10% of my empire's profits if they officially recognize him as dead. If he was dead, the Union couldn't use him as a political tool. The Syndicate agreed. They wanted the money more than they wanted a ghost. Power shift. I bought peace by selling my future profits. I save his life by killing his existence. The war ended not with a bang, but with a signing ceremony. The Syndicate, the Logistics Union, and the grain cartels all met in my restaurant. I sat at the head of the table. My father sat to my right. We signed the Ash District Harmonization Treaty. It turned the entire district into a corporate zone. No more gangs, no more riots, just economic flow. "You've done it, Hannah," my father said, raising a glass of expensive wine. "Total stability. And look at your kitchen. It's the most efficient in the world." I looked through the pass-through window. Unit 742 was moving with terrifying speed. He didn't look at the guests. He didn't look at the war ending in the dining room. He was just a blur of grey fabric and soapy water. He was the perfect worker. He had no ego, no past, and no name to defend. The treaty was finalized. The red stamp slammed down on the table over and over again. The sound didn't bother me anymore. It sounded like progress. As the guests left, my father leaned in. "You're a queen now, Hannah, but remember the rule of the ledger. Every queen needs an heir, and every heir starts as a debt." I looked at the ledger. My name was at the top. Underneath it, the asset line was glowing. I had won. I had everything. And I was the only person left in the city who was truly alone. Chapter 10. The Queen and the Tool. The restaurant is quiet now. The neutral ground sign has been replaced by a gold-plated Union seal. I sit at the host stand, which has been upgraded with a dozen monitors tracking the district's calories. I am the most powerful person in the street economy. People bow when they walk past my window. In the back, in the shadows of the dish pit, a man is working. I walk back there. I haven't spoken to him in months. 742, I say. He doesn't look up. He is scrubbing a copper pot. It's already clean, but he keeps scrubbing. The copper is wearing thin. "We're moving to the upper district tomorrow," I tell him. "A bigger kitchen, more responsibility." He stops. For a second, his shoulders tense. He turns around. His eyes are empty. There's no prince in there. There's no boy who loved a girl in a small kitchen. There is only the machine. He reaches out his hand, not to touch my face, but to take the dirty glass I'm holding. He takes it. He puts it in the water. I look at his wrist. The barcode tattoo has faded, but the identity erasure is complete. If I called him June, he wouldn't even know I was talking to him. I didn't save him from the Syndicate. I didn't save him from the war. I spent him. I walk back to the host stand and open the ledger. I pick up the red stamp. On the very last page, I see a new entry, automatically generated by the system. Asset status, finalized. Name, null. Value, infinite. I press the stamp down one last time. I don't cry. Crying is a deficit. I simply close the book and wait for the next customer to arrive. The system is perfect. The debt is paid. And the man who washed dishes beside me never existed at all.